lovely group here.
Yes.
Yes, look at this. Nice.
Hi, Pak Emil, how are you? Pak Emil is here. And Richard and Pak Mountain. Oh, David, we are going to use like mix and match bahasa Indonesia but you
That's
need to
all right.
learn. And there will be a test right after your bahasa, okay?
As I said, I have to come to Indonesia and learn the language. I want to learn Bahasa and Javanese.
So what time is it in New Jersey?
Right now we are looking at 11:01.
Wow.
Yes.
Oh,
quite late.
It's still Sunday. This is Sunday night.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's amazing, right?
Yes. But in an hour it's gonna be Monday morning, like dead of night morning kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Monday here. So
yes. Nice.
All right. Shall we start?
Are we gonna wait or are we gonna start? You can start, Yogi.
Okay, sure.
I mean,
all right. Shall we start, David?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay. Good morning from Indonesia, ladies and gentlemen, and David, thank you so much. So welcome to our faculty's professional development amidst the global pandemic. So this event is proudly managed by CLC, CTE, Center of Teaching Excellence, and then LaRS and EduPath journals as well. And yeah, of course, last but not least, it's PSTE department. So this morning we'll have Dr. David Wandera, Assistant Professor, Special Education, Language and Literacy, School of Education at the College of New Jersey, USA. So basically there are several things that we are going to do this morning. So first of all, definitely we'll listen opening speech from Ani Pujiastuti as the head of PSTE department, and then coordinator of CLC as well, and then chief editor for Language Research and Society Journal. And yeah, we'll have like a brief introduction of Dr. David Wandera. And then we'll have the main presentation as well. And we will end it with question and answer session from the participants. All right, so for the very first agenda, we'll have opening speech from Bu Ani Pujiastuti. So please, time is yours, Bu Ani. You're muted, Bu Ani. Yeah.
see, I always forget that I need to unmute my microphone. Oh, Yogi, thank you so much for organizing the event. I mean, I was thinking it's, we're gonna do it less formal, okay? So everybody are going to feel more comfortable and just be friendly with another because we're connecting the borders. So actually, I would like to thank everyone for being here. I know that everybody are very busy with the distance learning, with the organizing the new curriculum. Also because everybody are working from home, including David, I believe. So working from home is actually no joke because, 1 minute we are in front of the computer and then, another minute we are going to have to do something else because, sometimes we cannot avoid distraction, right? A lot of distractions. But anyway, actually, it has been my biggest dream to be able to connect President University with more international conversation, especially related to teachers' professional development, because we badly need it. I mean, that's why the title of our event is not coffee break anymore, but it is COVID break, because we need a break. We need to take a break, right? So, David, but David is my good friend. We attended the same, not the same program, but we went to the same school for our PhD program. So a couple of months ago, or a couple of weeks ago, David, right? We started the conversation, and then, you know, trying to think about how if we connect not only ourselves, but also our fellow educators, so that we can extend our conversation and the dialogue, so that we can develop us professionally. So as a teacher, well, as an educator, of course, we need to be always flexible and ready to whatever is happening in the classroom, especially in the classroom. So today, actually, my initial plan was to introduce the President University, and then, you know, my colleagues, of course, and then the program, the departments, our activities and stuff like that. But I'm going to flip something here. So I'm going to use this opportunity to talk about something else. So probably David can also, David is probably having a lot of questions related to our university, how we you know, operate within campus or outside campus, what kind of activities that we have as academicians and outside of academic village. So I will leave it to David later. So I'm not going to do the introduction, no intro, okay? So we have stayed home for around 3 or 4 months, probably for most of us, right? And distance learning or remote learning or whatever we may call it, it's no joke. It is super tiring. And then I do believe that our institution, our students, the stakeholder, the users always expect us to do our best, to give our best service for them. But what about the teachers? What about the educators? What about us? You know, we have to take care of ourselves, right? And I do believe that because of our devotion to our professional field, then we need to find a way to develop ourselves. So I know that there is always a connection between traditional learning and right now we have to switch to the online learning. Even though previously I was very skeptical about online learning, but then of course we have no choice. This is the only way to go. We have to use the online learning. So for most of us, including for myself, this is the first one. So everything is super messy, but learning process is very, very messy. So what can we do is, because as educators, what we have is only each other. So without collaboration, without communication with one another, then we are going to be limited to our perspective. And that is very, very dangerous for educators. So we have to extend our, you know, way of thinking. We have to think out of the box. And then also to things that will be very important in this case is innovation and of course connection. So how we innovate related to curriculum, related to the classroom management, because you know the activities are no longer face to face, you know, we are separated by distance. So we need to be connected globally. So we are going to feel the sense of accomplishment. We're going to be able to celebrate our, you know, power together as educator, and extending, probably promoting the cross-cultural understanding, and also the dialogue, the conversations around not only education, but also our personal betterment. So hopefully from this event, even though this is, you know, very, very super simple, but hopefully in the future, we're going to be able to make this event a lot better, you know. So hopefully we're going to be able to take away something that will be beneficial for our classroom and be in our professional development. That's all from me. I'm going to give the stage back to Yogi.
All right, thank you so much, Bu Ani, for the opening speech. Definitely, it's very important for us to empower each other, especially during this COVID-19 era as well. Okay, so yeah, for the next agenda, perhaps I'd like to briefly introduce Dr. David. So yeah, this is his academic background. So he went to Moi University in Kenya for his Bachelor of Education, Amidst, and then he completed his Master of Literature, Master of Arts at Middlebury College. And then he also went to the Ohio State University for his PhD degree, I think. Yeah, similar to Bu Ani, right? Yeah, so his scholarly interests include transcultural literacy practices, digital literacies, multimodal pedagogy in classrooms, new literacy studies, discourse analysis, ethnography and communication, and qualitative research methods, collaborative and online learning communities. This is very relevant, especially during this COVID-19 era, and social justice and education as well. Yeah. And then, yeah, heaps of achievements as well, including article publication, book reviews, conference presentations, being a peer review, and writing center coordinator and trainer as well. And then journal reviewer and co-recipient of lots of grants. And then here is actually the list of his publications, and I will also share this slide to all participants. And this is also the list of his conference presentations in the past. Okay. Yeah, so perhaps that's that for the brief introduction of Dr. David Wandera. So yeah, for now, it's actually for the main presentation. So for Dr. David, the time is yours. Thank you.
So a lot of other things that you can be doing as opposed to being here listening to me, listening to this person who is overdue to go to bed and is kind of rambling in his kitchen, all that. So it's great to have you all here. Thank you, Annie, and to your university for having me and for inviting me to have this conversation. I'm going to treat this as an informal or semi-formal conversation. This is one of the things that I said to Annie, that we need to kind of just, let's talk to one another. Because one of the things is teachers tend to be cloistered in their own little silos. In this case now, it's in your own homes, in your kitchen or in your living room, whereby you're doing your work, but there's nobody else, or you think there's nobody else there with you, but we are teachers all over the world. When I was teaching in Kenya, I used to be a high school teacher of English and literature. I come from Kenya. That's a country in sub-Saharan Africa. So when I was teaching there, I would travel to the United States and I would meet teachers here. And we would have conversations and you would feel like we're speaking to someone who works with you, because teachers experience the same things across borders and that kind of thing. I've done my dissertation research. I've been to Alaska. That's where I did some of the research for my dissertation. And I worked there with educators, with elders, with sort of community folks. And again, people have the same kinds of issues that they're worried about. And these are issues of clarity, issues of communication, issues of survival, and things like that. So anyway, it's good to be here. It's what I'm trying to say. And it's good to see people who we can share our sense of humanity and kind of be together. So thanks for that. I wanted to start off. I do not have a very I decided I'm just going to speak to you. So that's what I'm going to do. And if you have questions, if there's very question time, if you need to say something. I'll be okay with that. So I teach at the College of New Jersey, and I teach in a teacher education program. This is the School of Education at the College of New Jersey. Now, TCNJ, as we know it, is primarily a teacher education institution. That's how it started back in the 20s and 30s and so on. But over time, it developed other schools. And so the School of Education is one of 7 schools that you can find if you go to the College of New Jersey, where I teach. So within the College of New Jersey, within the School of Education, there are 4 different major departments. So there's a counselor education. This is because teachers need to be able to work with students in terms of their psychosocial and emotional development. So students are taught counselor education. So there's that department. There's another department which is elementary and early childhood education. This is focusing, of course, on very young kids, and it's looking at the beginning, sort of trying to get the skills, literacy skills, numeracy skills, and communication skills, social skills, and that kind of thing. And so that's the department of elementary early childhood education. The other one is the Department of Educational Administration and Secondary Education. Just before that, the elementary early childhood education also has urban education. And that's just because in the US, one doesn't think of the US as having rural areas and having urban settings and suburban settings. And it's a very different geographically and very different settings in terms of the way they're configured, in terms of populations and in terms of the amenities and so on. So when I was in Kenya, for example, I used to think about the United States, and the picture that comes to my mind is New York City, kind of like all those cities and the buildings and everything like that, Los Angeles and things like that. But I wasn't thinking about the countryside. I wasn't thinking about the rural side, places where the Appalachian region is, or where the reservations, like the Navajo reservations and so on. So they're very different spaces when it comes to how they're set up and so on. I've actually told a few friends of mine that anytime I'm in the Navajo Nation, I feel like I'm back in Kenya, which is sad because it tells you about some of the inequalities that exist in terms of economic inequalities and in terms of other kinds of inequalities that exist. Because you're still in the United States, like I'm still in the US, but going to the Navajo Nation, which is in the southwestern side of the United States, I totally feel like I am in Kenya because the houses are small, the amenities are very scruffy looking and everything like that. You don't have the amount of opulence that you see in other states. And so that tells you that there's some inequality going on. Anyway, so this urban education under the Department of Elementary and Early Childhood Education. And the other one is, that's the third one, is the Educational Administration and Secondary Education. This is for teachers who want to teach in high school. I was a high school teacher of English and literature myself. So if I were at TCNJ, I would have been in Education Administration and Secondary Education. So that's for older students. And where I teach, the department in which I'm housed is the Department of Special Education, Language, and Literacy. Special education is actually very important, for, at least to me, because when I think about the whole notion of inclusivity, being able to teach to the whole child and catering for every student, differentiated instruction and things like that. When you think about special education, you're thinking about all the learning disabilities and the needs, the learning needs that students present when they come into the classroom. Some of them are emotional learning needs, others are social learning needs, others are cognitive learning needs, others are developmental learning needs. You have kids who come there who have not quite developed, and you have dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, you have ADHD, that's attention deficit hyper disorders, and various other conditions, executive function, social resistance, or that kind of thing. So there's a lot of focus on being able to have an inclusive kind of education and teach to the whole child, and that's the special education. So this department, where I teach, is the Department of Special Education, Language and Literacy. So I am in the language and literacy part of this department. There's two groups that were merged to form this one department. So as you heard from that introduction, of the wonderful introduction that Yogi did of me, my area of specialization is transcultural literacy practices. Now, what that means is my degree, my PhD specialization is in communication across cultural and geographical difference. Understanding how meaning is made and shared, and maybe even reconfigured across difference. In my dissertation, I studied how students in Nairobi, Kenya, were collaborating and communicating, asking questions with students and telling stories and all that with students in Aleknagik, a small village in the southwestern part of Alaska. And I had to go to Alaska and kind of work over there, do some research. Then I went back to Kenya, to my country, and I did some research over there with my former students and put them back in communication with one another, and came up with a dissertation that made a number of points, according to me. I'm hoping to publish more from my dissertation. I'm actually working on an article at the moment. But one of the points that comes out of my dissertation is that there are implicit and explicit instances of miscommunication that people have across cultural and geographical difference. So right now, you come from Indonesia, I come from Kenya, right? We're communicating in English right now, and because it's kind of like the lingua franca. So we're using that to communicate. But the thing about using the same language is that languages are situated, they're localized in meaning. You can speak English, but you can have a local nuance to the English that you speak, which is unintelligible or cannot be understood by someone who doesn't come from the area where you come from. So for example, the students in Alaska were talking about, were writing to the students in Nairobi about, it was a theme-based piece of writing, so they were all writing on the same theme. So in this case, the theme was my favorite day or my day at school. Describe your day at school. So a student in Alaska is describing their day at school, and they're sending that description to the student in Nairobi who did the same, and so they exchanged those descriptions. The students in Alaska described getting on a school bus. Now the students in, among other things of course, the students in Kenya, when they picked up the emails from the students in Alaska and they read those emails, they thought they understood what was going on there. It was only until later on when the students in Alaska sent an image of a school bus to the students in Kenya, that's when it occurred to both sides, me included as a teacher, that there was a miscommunication, because what the students were in Alaska were referring to as a school bus was a four-wheeler pulling a trailer kind of thing. So it was not what you'd call a bus in the conventional sense. Now it turns out that the localized version of the term school bus in Alaska is seasonal, because Alaska is in a kind of a place where the weather is very predominant and preeminent in everything they do. It gets very harsh and it gets very snowy and can get dark very quickly. It can be bright for the whole day kind of thing. And so the weather is a very major player in everything that they do. On the contrary, in Nairobi, which is on the equator, the days and the nights are equal in length. Every day, for as long as I was born, the sun would rise at the same time and set at the same time. And there's nothing like seasons. The only season is it's rainy and cold and wet, or it's hot and sunny, and that kind of thing. And even though you say cold, it depends on where you come from. Because right now, the kind of cold, when it gets winter here, and then I think about cold in Nairobi, I feel like that's not cold. That's really warm and nice and toasty. But in the US, that's how they look at it. But here, the cold season is really, really cold. Anyway, so the point I was making about my own specialization in transcultural literacies is that I work with teachers when I teach them in various courses that I teach them to educate students when it comes to literacy. So in the language and literacy section, we service all the other departments. That means that the student teachers who are coming to us from counselor education, they want to be able to have an ability in literacy. So they come to us in the language and literacy side and we work with them, and we teach them about the pedagogical strategies, inclusive approaches to understanding how to teach students who don't look like you, and so on. So elementary education and secondary education and so on. So we work with them. The thing about that, though, is that our program has got various kinds of preparations, and I just wanted to cover a little bit because Annie asked me to talk about teacher preparation and how it looks like in my college. So one of those sections is there's a service and outreach component where students are expected in the course of their program to fulfill something called liberal arts requirements. What that means is they'll take some courses which will take them out of their classes into the community. So some of these courses are going to give them knowledge about issues of gender. They're going to give them knowledge about issues of history, issues of art and music, because we're thinking, even if you're specializing as a science teacher, you need to have an appreciation of some of the artistic elements of life, like music, like art, like sculptures and things like that. So some of those courses that they do in the liberal requirement will allow students to have programs where they go into museums and places like that to just get a wider exposure, to be exposed to programs in the community where they can work with students who are different from them. The teaching workforce in the United States is predominantly female and white and middle class. Those are three main demographic characteristics of the teaching workforce in the US. Now, I am totally not what I've just described. So I am not white, I'm not female, and I'm not middle class in the sense that's constructed in the US demographic identities. So what happens with that is my students are always very interested, I feel, when they come into class and they see this Kenyan standing in front of them as the professor, the instructor, talking to them about pedagogy and about transcultural literacies and about assessment and literacy instruction and about the various ways for teacher preparation, including the various certifications that they need to take in order to be teachers and so on. So I feel like one of the things that I do, even by my own presence, is that I present this idea of transcultural literacy. I present this idea of communication across difference, because my students need to communicate with me, and I'm different. I come from a non-Western socialization, and I make that very clear in my introduction to my students. I tell them I speak a number of languages. I was looking at Ethnologue, in Indonesia language. In Africa, we have about 2,100 languages. Most of those languages are in sub-Saharan and Central Africa. That's where I come from. So Indonesia and Africa alone have a combined total of 40% of all the languages spoken in the world. Because Ethnologue has listed that there are about 7,090 something languages in the world, right? And so it's really interesting to think that 2,100 languages are spoken in Africa and 700 in Indonesia. Anyway, so that's kind of a long, circuitous way of saying that I speak a number of languages myself. So I speak Swahili, the national language in Kenya. I speak English, which is the official language in Kenya. I speak Luya, which is my native language. Sheng is sort of like a way of speaking that teenagers used to speak. Now, the thing is, my Sheng dates me. I understand a little bit of Mijikenda, which is another language or local language in Kenya where I grew up. And so being in a country which is multilingual, as you are, you know that the whole idea of what's your first language, what's your second language, and that kind of thing, is a little bit of a wonky way of understanding language, but it's a way that's been imposed by second language acquisition studies, which are Western-centric, Anglo-centric, monolingual kind of situated in thinking about how humans acquire language. So I present myself to my students and I tell them, I'm gonna have you disabuse a few things. in terms of your imaginings about the rest of the world. And one of them is how humans acquire language. So we have that conversation about how humans acquire language. I give them exercises to do. And even when they interact with me, they hear me speak and they hear an accent. And they ask me, where are you from? What kind of what accent is that I'm hearing? And we talk about that. And this idea that native speakers of English do not have an accent is in itself a fallacy. And we disabuse that, we discuss that, we deconstruct it and talk about what accents are and how they index some other signature or linguistic signature that we present in our repertoire of communication. Some people have a broad repertoire. Those amongst you who speak like 4, 5, 6 languages, my mother speaks 6 languages. That kind of thing. So that's a broad repertoire of communicative resources. But you can have a limited repertoire of communicative resources, and that's if you're monolingual. And so we talk about the neuroplasticity, which is the brain. When you're born, it's very malleable and you're able to acquire so many languages. But the problem with people who are in monolingual settings is that you are born in a space which presents you a very limited menu. It's just one language. You have to learn English and that's it. So your brain prunes all the other extra neurons. And this has actually been studied in neurolinguistics. And there's research that can back this up. But your brain prunes up all that and you're left just acquiring English and that's it. So your depth in English is really, really immense because that's you're monolingual in that way. But people who are multilingual like you and myself, I'm guessing here that you're multilingual like me. People who are multilingual are more broad in their understanding of language and their use. And anyway, so I also wanted to say that we have professional preparation where we have extensive field work that our candidates attend. What that means is that in the course of teacher education, we make sure that our students have gone into schools to start teaching. So can you imagine, it's a 4-year program. The undergraduate degree is a 4-year program. In their second year, we have student teachers going into schools to do a 1-month placement, field placement for 1 month, where they're in schools and they are teaching, and we are with them. Like as an instructor, I'm with my students in the schools, working with them. In the second year, in the third year, they're going to do the same. It's going to be for the whole semester, but it's a half a day. In the last year, they're going to do the main practicum, and that's when they go back into teaching in the schools. And this time around, they're teaching for the whole semester. They're teaching for a full day, and they're really shadowing the teacher. By the end of the teaching experience, or in terms of the training, they have immersed themselves in a professional experience in the classroom, so they can actually say, I have taught so many hours in the classroom, and that kind of thing. I've got 2 other things to say before I invite questions. The urban education program, of course, invites students to teach in urban settings and in peri-urban settings, like some of those other spaces that are not really urban, the suburbs and other places like that, so that you have an exposure to various kinds of teaching. So all that goes into professional experience. In order to become a teacher, you have to be certified. To be certified, you have to have met the requirements of the institution, in this case, the College of New Jersey, which means you've taken all the classes that we want you to take and you've passed them. You've done all the liberal learning requirements and you have done really well in that. And you have also done all the professional experience exposure, like going for teaching practicum in your second year, in your third year, you've taken classes that do that. And in your final year, you've done the main thing. But then the other thing is you have also done the teaching certification tests, and there's 2 of them in New Jersey. Each state has got its own, and the different states harmonize theirs differently. But let me talk about New Jersey. So New Jersey, if you're in New Jersey, you're going to take Praxis 1, which is an ability test that you do, English, math, and I think it's writing or reading. But basically, it's an ability test. That's the basic praxis. But the second one that you have to do is the content praxis, which is what subject are you specializing to teach? And that's the one that you're going to focus on when you do praxis 2. And so it's got a subject content certification. So once you have certified the college expectations and the state expectations, you get a teacher license, and then you become a licensed teacher, and you can teach. Now, if I'm a licensed teacher and I can teach in New Jersey, some states recognize the New Jersey teacher licensure. So if I travel, for example, if I move, right, get married and you move to New York State, right? You move to New York State, you are able to transfer your credentials to New York credentials, and you can teach over there and so on. But in other states, like in Texas, I think also Ohio, when you go there, you have to do the content practice again. They have their own thing. They have different names and they call it different things and that kind of thing. So in terms of certification, the teachers are really expected to meet all these requirements. The basic education is your bachelor's. What we do to make our students more marketable is we have a 5-year program, which means you're 4 years in doing the undergraduate degree, but in your 4th year, you'll do some extra classes. So you're going to have a heavy 4th year where you will start doing master's level classes that will not count towards this degree, the undergraduate degree. It counts towards the master's degree. That year degree will certification. And that makes students who come through the College of New Jersey very, very marketable. Our students actually top in town when it comes to the field, when they're hired in different spaces. So one of the questions I wanted to ask, because Annie said I've got questions, and I do. What are some of the training expectations and certification that you all have? I'm told you come from different disciplines, so I would like to hear what disciplines you come from and what training looks like in your discipline, and we can share that. And I know I'm talking for too long. I really want us to have a conversation now. So I'm going to be quiet now and invite comments, questions, and just to, once again, to say thank you very much for having me. Thanks.
So, Bapak Ibu, we promised to address David with Pak, right? So, Pak David, thank you so much for the, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful story always. That's something that I always miss from you. So, your stories. So it's always fascinating, when I cannot believe it. You talk about the, what is it? The brain neuroplasticity or whatever that is. That's like, I don't know what that is. So here we have, actually, David is a perfect person to be here this morning because of his status as, he's from Kenya, and then he is currently working in the United States. And of course he has to teach, according to whatever culture, academic culture there in the US. So, similarly at President University, we also have several faculty members, almost, the same status. So here we have Bu Jacy, Miss Jacy. Bu Jacy is from the Philippines. So, and also Miss Dong, she is from Taiwan. So
this is great.
Yeah,
I love it.
So very, very, very rich, in experiences and everything. So probably Jacy would like to say something about that related to, I don't know, teacher certification, probably in the Philippines, and also your experience in being academician in Indonesia, because I think even though both countries are almost probably the same in terms of academic educational system, but I'm pretty sure that, there are so many things that are also different.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you, Miss Annie. Good morning, good evening, David. Well, in terms of certification, in Indonesia, I follow the Indonesian teacher certification, which is what we call SERDOS. It is a 4-part testing process. And as a Filipino who has difficulty actually understanding Indonesian in terms of the writing, it was difficult for me to pass the test. But because I have been here for a while, and maybe 25 years married to my husband, but never stayed here. I was able to understand and pass the test really, because there were some maths there, so the maths helped me, and also the logical thing. But if you were to give me a test in full Bahasa, I don't think I would have passed that. Yeah. Certification in the Indonesian Philippines are almost the same. You cannot get a university teacher certification without passing through. But I'm not going to discuss that. I do have a question really for you. You see, I also speak like 5 languages. I speak English, which I speak Tagalog, which is our national language. I speak Bisaya. Which is my mother's ethnic tongue. And I speak Indonesian fluently. And the last one is I speak Kinaraya. Kinaraya is a very basic subform of Bisaya, which is very, very difficult to understand, because when you speak it, it has a lot of R. So when I'm speaking to somebody from my mother's town, I have to speak the Kinaraya. And when I have to speak to someone who is from my city, I have to speak Ilonggo. When I speak to someone who is Indonesian, I have to speak Indonesian and so on. So it's sometimes in my mind, I have to keep processing, and sometimes I speak Bahasa when in fact I'm talking to a Filipino. So sometimes they correct me and said, "Hey, do you realize what you're saying?" And I said, "What? Were you just talking to us in what language was that?" And I wasn't sure about that. So sometimes it's difficult to shift from one thing to another. So language, in your experience, language does have a way of moderating one's identity, I guess. You know, you need to shift from one identity to another. What has been your experience in this sense? And the second question I have is really for special education. I'm not sure whether you're familiar. Of course, you're familiar with special education, but we have a school here in President University called the Special Needs Center. Yeah, Special Needs Center. Now, the problem of the lecturers in the Special Needs Center is this: with the online teaching, they cannot impart to the students the knowledge effectively, because they are not able to teach properly the disabled children through online teaching, because they are not used to that. The disabled kids are used to playing and you know, conversing and engaging with the lecturers. Now they have to speak, they have to teach them using online, and it's difficult for lecturers. But the number one problem of the lecturers too in our special needs center is this: the parents. The parents do not know how to teach their children, the special needs children. Now the teachers are saying to the parents, "Please help us teach your children." And the parents say, "No, we do not know how to teach our own children. That's why we're sending them to your school." So on this second question, I'd like to know what has been the experience of your school in teaching special needs children online. And on the first question is on the self-moderating effect of language and culture and all that. Thank you, David.
Yeah, thanks. These are great questions. Thank you so much for them. I'll start off with the first one because that's to me the easier one. Because as I said, my area of specialization is transcultural literacies, and so I should have something to say about the notion of language moderating one's identity. The way it's understood from the literature that I have read so far is that human beings are very agentive, and human beings are also very homogregarious. Now, agentive means that we have a will. We want things and we do things, and we use language as our instrument. So there's a thing called, or there's a concept called the instrumentality of language. It's an instrument or a tool that we use to achieve a certain end, kind of thing. So right now, for example, I know that I have Swahili as my tool, but that's not going to help me here to achieve the end that I want to achieve here, which is to communicate with you all. So instead of using that, I'm using English, which is now the lingua franca. The other one, as I said, homogregarious. And in social settings construct expectations among the members of that society and that kind of thing. And so the point I'm making is that even when it comes to language, there's a difference in there's a difference in the way we focus on language. So one group of scholars who focus on language in terms of language regulating identity are group of scholars who look at the structural nature of language, the accuracy of language. And these ones are the linguists. They're looking at structural linguists. They're looking at the structure of language, which is preformed before an interaction and how that is regulating the way that we communicate right now. I'm a social linguist, so I have to put that on the table and to say that social linguists argue differently. We say that language is negotiated and navigated within interactions. And so you and I right now are going to try and find the best way that works within these circumstances when we speak. And part of that is self-correction, other correction, which is repair, self-repair, other repair, and various other concepts. So when you're speaking a language to an Indonesian person or to your fellow Filipino, and you're speaking them in Indonesian and they don't understand, them asking you is an instantiation of other repair. They're kind of trying to tell you to come back to a certain agreed sort of realm. Now, it doesn't, a social linguist will say, your language is not wrong. It's just an interactional outcome. Your language is not achieving the outcome that you wanted to achieve. A structural linguist will say, nope, let's think about the sentence and the construction of the sentence and how it's supposed to be, and then let's look at how you are doing it, and this is right or this is wrong based off of this other thing, kind of thing, so and so on. So my own thinking, the short answer to your question is that language moderates one's identity in as much as one moderates the nature of language within social settings. But that's my view as a social linguist telling you that. Of course, you'll find a structural linguist who will answer the question very differently and even disagree with me entirely. So that's the interesting thing about that. And so even what trying that get rid of the linguistic repertoire that I have, which has me pronounce some words in certain ways that is where my accent signals a certain identity. So your accent can signal an identity, and that's language getting you to be configured in certain ways. But you too can reconfigure by learning new languages, by having some other kinds of aptitude that allows you to immerse yourself in various ways of speaking. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
It does, but it's taxing. Sometimes it's emotionally, mentally taxing to start converting, you know. Maybe if I'm younger, I could adapt because age is a factor as well. But as I grow older, to adapt to different settings is a bit taxing for me. That's why kids who are younger learn quickly, you know, to adapt, self-moderate. But for us, I don't know, I want to say my age, but it's quite difficult, so it's always like that, but it is always a process for me, and somehow it keeps my mind occupied that I'm doing the process. Yes, thank you.
When I was in Alaska and I was speaking to the Yupik elders, there's a Native American community in Alaska called Yupik. It's one of the local communities that was there before the Russians went to Alaska and discovered Alaska, before the Americans bought Alaska from the Russians, and that kind of history. If you go back to the history, the Yupik elders were telling me the same thing that you're telling me here, that they speak English and they speak Yupik, but they're telling me Yupik, when they speak English, their tongue feels tired, because Yupik is actually, the sounds of Yupik are guttural, then from the back of the mouth, so they have the ha ha sound that comes from the back. English is the front of the mouth. If you talk about the phoneme production and the articulators, the buccal cavity, the mouth is articulator, the front of the mouth, like when you say pa, the lips, the teeth, the tongue. There's a lot of action in the front of the mouth when you speak English. But when you speak in Yupik, there's a lot of action in the back of the mouth. So they were talking about my tongue feels tired when I speak English at the end of the day. So that's kind of a thing I've done in my own research. And I want to even write a paper of feeling tired and all that. The other question you asked, which is about being able to work with students who have special needs and what ways one can be able to use online avenues to reach them and that kind of thing. Well, part of what we do in special education is to talk about assistive technology and augmentative technology. So we talk about technology that enhances a capacity that the student doesn't have. So if a student is heavily impaired in terms of their speech because they have Down syndrome, so they can't speak. So you give them an iPad. The iPad that they get is something that they can type on, and they can show you the iPad, and it is able to communicate for them. Now that is assistive. There's the other kind, another kind of technology which replaces. If you're wearing glasses, that is assisting your eyes to see even better, right? So that's assistive tech. But imagine a person who doesn't have a certain ability at all. And so basically what I'm saying is that there are various technological infrastructure of support in institutions like, say, the College of New Jersey, where students are able to tap into those when they are even doing online. Last semester when I was teaching, sitting right here, I was teaching a class, and one of my students was deaf and hard of hearing, and all she could do was read my lips. But she needed more assistance than that, because sometimes I move my lips a little bit differently from a native speaker of English, and so she misreads what I'm saying. So what happens was, one of the people who was attending my class was a captioner that would listen to me and would caption in real time what I'm saying on the screen of the student who is sitting home, wherever it is, attending my class. So the point I'm making is that the institution needs to invest in some supportive technology that the students can tap into, either to augment their functioning, maybe, or maybe even replace their functioning and things like that. But this is a question of investment, and the higher ups, the people who do the budget, they're the ones who can take care of that.
Yeah, where Coursera does that and Udemy does that, but not many people have access to these kinds of.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. That's all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Any further questions, perhaps, from other participants?
Or comments. You all need to tell me about, I don't know, how many different disciplines are represented here. Like, what discipline do you come from, and what do you like about your discipline? How about that?
I come from the School of Business. I'm the Dean of the School of Business. There are four program study. We have accounting, management, five. Accounting, management, business administration, actuarial science. Maria is here. Oh, she's not here. She's gone. And then the master's in business, MBA in technology. Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm a qualitative researcher, and I'm really interested in language and communication in business. Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Emil?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Wandi. Thank you, Mr. David, for was a very good presentation.
Pak Emil, not Mr. David, but Pak David.
Oh, Pak David. Thank you, Pak David, for a very good presentation. So I'm interested in what are your statements before that. To be a teacher, you have to be qualified, and and you prepare students to be qualified teacher, right? And my question is regarding the online learning, especially related to this COVID-19 situation. So do you prepare your students to teach online as well? And then the next question is, so what requirements do you need your student, okay, what requirements do you put to your students to be able to teach online? So we can, maybe we can learn something new from you as a user to be applied here in Indonesia. Thank you, Pak Dave.
Okay, this is great. Thanks. I do teach my students online, and one of the things we do is that we're talking we're focusing on a course that has got its course objectives. So, for example, one of the courses that I teach is Introduction to Speech, Language, and Communication Development. Well, I really like that class because we're asking ourselves, the big question is, how do humans acquire language? Now, why does a teacher care about how humans acquire language? They do care about that because when they go into the classroom, the main medium of communication is language, right? So we're going to use language with people. Now, we're going to use language with students who speak other languages than the ones that we speak. So that's important for us to therefore understand a general ecology of how humans acquire language. So one of the things I do is I try to expose my students to various scenarios where they engage with different languages, different accents, different expectations. There are different schools of thought, for example, that argue about how aspects of language are supposed to be understood. So, for example, one school of thought says that mothers should not speak to their children in parentese or motherese. That's like, you know, when you get a kid and you're kind of cradling the baby and you're speaking to the kid, you're not, if I'm holding a baby, I wouldn't speak to the baby in the way I'm speaking to you right now. I would change my pitch, higher pitch, my facial features would kind of be more dramatic or dramatized and things like that. And the proximity would be closer to the baby. I wouldn't speak to a little kid, an infant, when I'm looking away because they don't do abstraction or kind of abstract. They need gaze and things like that. So we talk about some of these things and we study them and we look, I give them media where some of these things are put in use or in action in different cultures, and we watch them together and we kind of unpack what we are seeing over there. What are the various layers, the cultural layer, the ideological belief system, what kind of stereotypes might be underpinning what's going on over there? What stereotypes do we have that we bring to that? Because we're human and we bring stereotypes. Now, what do those stereotypes do in terms of enabling my functionality as a teacher, or maybe impeding my functionality as a teacher? So the various things that we can think about when it comes to what we do. But what I'm trying to say basically is that I try to very intentionally source material, audiovisual material, which I expose my students to in online spaces, where various elements of language acquisition, language use, language assessment, language values, ideologies, and things like that are presented, and then we talk about that, and we try and really unpack them, and then we bring it back to the classroom. As a teacher, why do I care about this stuff? And so we kind of try and do that. Now, in terms of what we can do to help students in times of COVID, I think it depends on the platform that you have. One of the platforms that I use in my school is Canvas. I mainly use Canvas, actually. I don't use Zoom when I'm teaching. I use Canvas. And I like having synchronous lectures and asynchronous lectures. So synchronous is like what we're doing right now, face-to-face. And I'm speaking, you speak at the same time. Asynchronous, I record a lecture. And then I post it. And my students will watch the lecture. After watching the lecture with all the stuff that I'm saying, within the lecture, I have questions in there that the students are going to get, and they will do a post-lecture reflection where they're answering those questions. And I've told them beforehand to listen out to the questions and to be able to do this. So I do some of those little things. Now, this is not to say I'm an expert in this. All of us were caught unawares by the COVID situation and propelled out of the classroom and into online spaces. So what we're doing, what my college is doing currently, we're training all instructors, me included, in online students where we, in the fall, in the spring was an situation to the anymore. I had to teach. Imagine go home, keep teaching. It's not the same. Like, it's training needed. Institutions need to and of top that we have.
Hopefully that answers your question, Pak Emil.
Yeah.
Actually,
Thank you for
David, we have. Thank you so much for the explanation. Actually, we have another question from Miss Risa. She attended a university as well for her master's in Texas. So she's been in the US. So probably Miss Risa, are you still there?
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Annie. I'm very sorry if I got disconnected in the middle of my questions because the internet connection is very, very weak in my area. And David, it's been very wonderful to meeting you online, and hopefully I can see you one day in the US. Amen. And then, well, you mentioned about the problems that you have in Kenya regarding the education inequality in rural settings, right? Well, actually, we've got the same problem here. And then, well, from my knowledge, Kenya regards English as a language in terms of foreign language, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? It is a second language over there.
English is the official language, so it's actually gotten the status of official language. You go to the offices, you have to speak in English. You teach at school, it has to be in English. You're transacting business, that's in English. Or in Swahili. Swahili is a national language. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. So my first question is, what is the government policy on teaching English to young learners? That is my first question. The thing is, here in Indonesia, we've got mixed feelings with English, with teaching English. That depends on the political situations that we have in Indonesia. If the government believes that English is important, and then teaching English will be paramount, will be, as we say, important to the younger learners. But I think that is not the same. They will all of us delete the with.
I think she got disconnected.
I think it is not.
Actually,
yeah, you're right. I'm very sorry for that. My second question. Yeah.
Okay.
But if you can hear me now,
yes.
My second question is to online teaching in primary schools in Kenya.
Okay. So, yeah, these are really great questions. Actually, the situation with COVID and unpreparedness of the Kenyan government to handle online teaching has been so severe that just 2 weeks ago, the Minister for Education announced that the entire academic year is going to be considered wasted. And I say it's going to be considered wasted, and students are going to report back to school and start from where they started. The reason that this was being said is because the internet, which I take for granted when I'm here in the US, in Kenya, it's not accessible. Not everyone can access the internet. So situations like this, for example, where somebody is not able to access the internet, or you have 20, 30 students, or in Kenya, the classes are large, so you have like 50 students. Now, out of those 50 students, maybe They don't even have laptops. They don't have iPads. They don't have laptops. They don't have electricity in some places in the countryside. And so talking about internet in itself is a very elitist conversation to have. They don't have running water to wash their hands with soap. So you're telling them you need to sit and have a laptop and listen to the teacher and so on. That's an elitist conversation. So what the government has done, it has declared in public schools that they're going to forfeit the academic year over there and start again. So that's part of those inequalities that show you how other countries are really suffering. The education system is suffering based off of this situation. When it comes to the government policy on teaching young kids or young people English, now English is a very incendiary topic when it depends on the government and so on. That used to happen in the up till the 80s and the very late 80s. Then the government changed its mind in Kenya and said, no, because it looks like English is a language of power. So if you have English, it's coupled with power, with success, monetary success, with career success, and that kind of thing. Frankly speaking, if I wasn't able to speak English, I would not be sitting in New Jersey right now having this conversation with you, right? So that's the thing. English also opens doors and so on. So the Kenyan government decided, well, let's not have that. Let's have our kids learning English from when they're very, very young. And so the policy has changed over time, and Swahili and English became the national language, and English is taught to kids when they're very young. Now, the difference is this. In monolingual places like the United States, a lot of people believe that when you learn another language, it's interfering with English. So this is English, and this is this other language. You can't speak Bahasa and English because Bahasa interferes with English, and so you need to forget about this, learn English, speak English and that kind of thing, and then you can be good at English. But a lot of research has come out and shown us that's all a fallacy. We have research that shows, going back to the neuroplasticity, that point I made earlier, that the human brain has a capacity to acquire so many languages when kids are born and when they're very young. A lot of scholarship proves this. And so many governments are actually looking at this and saying that you can teach kids more than one language. But in the US, I'm telling you, it's still a struggle. There's still people who look at bilingualism or multilingualism as a deficit, and monolingualism, especially in English, as a resource, and not a normal kind of thing. And as a literature professor, one of my jobs is to unpack that for them to understand the reality of the human condition. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. Well, actually, yeah, it somehow has enlightened me.
Okay, thanks.
Very sorry, my internet connection is not good over here. Thank you very much for your answers. I guess we have a lot of same issues in Kenya
Yes.
and in Indonesia, where here, if you teach English to young learners, a lot of people think that it will interfere the Bahasa Indonesia teaching, and then the kids will be like westernized, something like that. Yeah, so it's a bit challenging for me as an English teacher to teach English for the young learners.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, David.
Yeah, sure. You're welcome.
David, actually, that's our main problem here for some of us, you know, the facility, the electronic device, the internet. You know, I'm pretty sure that in New Jersey or like in the US in general, that problem doesn't exist, right? So,
I take it for granted. That's actually true. Like, I've never worried about my internet. I just make sure I pay for it. So the bill comes at the end of the month and I pay for it. And that's it. Just a few clicks of the button, I've paid for the internet. And right now I've got 3 devices that are all on the internet and I'm okay, kind of thing. This is a question of inequality and lack of equity and access. This is true.
so probably another question.
Yes. Or another statement. Tell me about yourself.
Another statement.
I would probably make a comment. The cultural wars going on in the US right now, is that a problem of language and communication? It is really disturbing to read about what's happening in the US. I have two sisters in the US. One lives in LA, near in Hollywood, actually. I don't know why she lives there. And then another is in Tennessee. We are deeply concerned about what's happening in the US. They're all medical personnel, by the way, so they're deeply impacted by the COVID. So, but English, it should be, I don't know what is going on there. That is communication so difficult that people cannot understand why.
One of the big
People should wear masks.
Well, one of the big flaws, there's politics as well. Different topic. One of the big issues here is that the foundation of the American society had a lot of crevices and cracks, and one of those is the crack and crevice of genocide, the killing of indigenous people, right? The other crack and crevice was the genocide and the kidnapping and bringing in of illegal slave labor from Africa and that kind of thing. And others is exploitation that goes on. And so there's various kind of fissures and cracks. And COVID time has allowed a lot of these things to come to the fore and to become very prominent. But these have always been in society. The killing of folks by police kind of thing is a thing that one looks at and sees as a terrible thing that's happening. What's my job? One of the things I ask myself is, what can I do about it? What can David do about the racism that's going on here and the riots that are going on and things like that? Well, here's what I can do. I teach teachers. So in my classes, I can be very intentional, deliberate, and try to be as clear as I can in imparting to the teachers that I teach about communication across difference. I try to make them see the world beyond Western-centric, monolingual, ethnocentric kind of ways so that they understand that there's a bigger world out there. Knowing that there are other humans out there is, I think, the beginning of the process. Because beyond that, what you want to do then is communicate with them and find out how they see life, how you see life. It'll be different because of culture, language, religion, practices, and things like that, beliefs and fears, aspirations, and all that. But kind of knowing that we have a shared humanity, I make that a very, very large part or element of my teaching and even my research. I do my research and I try to make sure that if you read any article that I have written, I don't want you to read the article and think, oh, is this guy an American who has written this? I want you to read it and say, this guy is a Kenyan who has written this. And how do I do that? I try to make sure that some of the other languages I speak are present in the work that I do. If not that, some of my worldviews that are non-Western and some of my other ideologies that are non-Western become present in what we do. I think we can all play a role in encouraging folks to communicate across difference. It's actually very big. It's very discouraging, as you're saying, yes. And but we are all human and we can do this together. I think majority of the people see this as a need for communication across difference.
Thank you, David.
Yes.
So probably one last question before we end the session. Pak Ibu. Pak David, thank you so much.
Yes.
Yes.
I could go on and listening to Pak David. But it's midnight there. We should invite you again, to speak to a bigger audience. We would love to have this discussion about the discourse, the languages, the different nuances about it. It's very interesting. Very interesting. I'm from the business faculty, but I'm really interested in these things.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I think the nature of Indonesia is also like, it's not very much different from the one in the US. So it's very multilingual. Like most of us are also multilinguals, I think, right?
Yes.
So the monolingual ideology, something like that, is also probably we also have it here. So
yes.
So probably one very last question before we end our
Can I
session.
Or
ask?
comment,
Yes.
perhaps. Yeah.
Or
Mhm.
comment or statement.
I have one question.
Oh,
All
Miss
right.
Dong. Okay, it's far away from Taiwan, so.
Okay, hello. This is Dong from Taiwan. Hello, David.
Hello.
Because you said about that Swahili and English are both national language, and especially English is your official language in Kenya. And I'm very interested that how does your government, I mean, for primary school students, how many periods do you have for Swahili and English? Because in Taiwan, English is a foreign language for us. And then we have, in elementary school, we have 2 periods from grade 3, 2 periods every week. 1 period is 40 minutes. And 5 periods for Mandarin. And we are not bilingual country. So how about Kenya? And I mean, for elementary school students?
Yes, so
primary,
that's actually
yeah.
a great question. English functions differently in different parts of the world. Okay, so in places like the United States, English is seen as the native language, or not native. That's wrong. English is seen as sort of like the main language, right? So ideologically, it's the language to learn and so on that people speak. In other countries that are non-native in English, English can either be a second language, or it can be a foreign language, or there's an area of social linguistics that looks at English in terms of global Englishes. And so in Kenya, we have Kenyan English. In India, they have Indian English and that kind of thing. So it's one of the languages, but it's mixed up with other languages. But to answer your question directly, a great question really, when a student goes into a classroom in Kenya, this is a public school. This is sort of like in a town or what places in Kenya. All subjects that they do. So they go into a classroom and they're going to learn history, geography, they're going to learn religion, they're going to learn math, science, and all that is taught in English. Okay?
Oh.
Now, yes, all that's taught in English. So if you're in, that's what I meant when I said English is the official language. So all the formal communication and transactions are done in English. So if you're in the classroom and you're teaching geography, you're teaching geography in English. And so you will talk about, this is volcanicity. And I learned about volcanicity. I learned about fault lines and things like that in English when I was in Kenya and so on. So that's one. But so Swahili, because Swahili is so prevalent, it's everywhere you go. You set foot out of the classroom, you're speaking to one another in Swahili, that kind of thing. You'll do a subject called Swahili. Okay, so Swahili is the one that's just one subject called Swahili. When you go into math, you're doing math in English, right? You're learning about measurements. You're learning about geometry and things like that. You're learning about all that in English in a math class. But when you're outside in the playground, you're going to speak Swahili because it's the national language. So Swahili is just one subject. You attend a subject called Swahili, but then every other class is taught in English.
Okay, so just one subject. And how many minutes and how
so these are about like
do you have Swahili? Once a week
40,
or once a week?
I would say Swahili is taught like maybe 4 times a week. And these are 50-minute classes or lessons. And we learn how to like write in Swahili. I took some Swahili classes and I learned how to do like poems in Swahili, stories in Swahili, the structure of Swahili language, to kind of try and do different compositions, descriptions in Swahili, persuasive writing in Swahili, and that kind of thing. So you do all that, but within the Swahili class, right? Which is 4 times a week for 50 minutes. But in one day, you have about 7 classes. Now, these other classes are in English, all of them, and not Swahili.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. These are great questions. Thanks.
All right, so I think that would be the last questions from the participants due to the limitation of the time. And it's already very late as well, yeah, in New Jersey. Okay.
It's now past midnight. This is Monday.
Oh, okay. So yeah, for the participants, definitely we would like to hear your feedback, and your feedback matters. So I have already sent the feedback form to the forum chat, and yeah, it will be great if you are able to fill in the survey. So it will take only 1 or 2 minutes, and would like to hear what kind of topics that you want in the future for our professional development programs, and yeah, general evaluation for the current event. And yeah, for those who haven't registered as well, so yeah, we would like to ask you to fill in the registration link in order to get the e-certificate, and the e-certificate will be sent perhaps a couple days after today. So yeah, that's that, I think. Bu Ani, any additional information?
Oh my goodness, I'm so speechless today. It's been such a wonderful conversation that we have this morning. So we're not only connecting East and West, but also we have a very important and beautiful dialogue, around our betterment as educator. So thank you again, David, for spending your almost midnight with us. I know that you need to sleep, but I know that you are also a night owl, so it doesn't matter for you, right? Yeah. So, well, I'm looking forward to having this type of conversation sometimes in the future. So please don't forget to fill in the form that is sent by Yogi over there.
Yeah.
So we are going to be able to, probably build a better platform for everybody to have this type of conversation. So hopefully we are going to be staying connected, empowered, and also inspired as educators, so we can help the learners and also help each other. Stay safe, everyone, wherever you are. Don't forget to wear mask. Do not hug anybody.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
And
Thank you.
good morning to New
Yes,
Jersey.
thank you. Good morning, good night. Yeah.
Thank you
Thank
very
you. Have a
much,
good day,
Mr.
yeah.
Wandera. Yeah. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
All
Terima
right.
kasih, Bu
Thank
Ani,
you.
Pak Yogi.
Sure.
So much.
Yeah, thank
Yes,
you.